Hey everyone, welcome back. I am pumped for this deep dive. I think this one is going to be really interesting.
Yeah,
We're
definitely.
going to be talking about BlockDAG, which is this blockchain project that is really making some waves right now with their announcement of the final testnet launch
All right.
coming up on March 28, 2025.
Hey, big day.
Yeah, so we've got this YouTube video that we're going to be looking at, and it's making some pretty bold claims.
Yeah, they always do, right?
They always do. That's the nature of these things. So we're going to try to break down what BlockDAG actually is, what this final testnet means, and really get to the bottom of, is this thing the real deal or is it just hype?
It's going to be fun to dig in.
Yeah, I'm excited. So let's just jump right in.
Let's do it.
So from watching this video, BlockDAG seems like it's trying to address some of the fundamental limitations that we've been seeing with existing blockchains like Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Yeah, that's what's really intriguing about this project. They're not just trying to, incrementally improve things. They're really trying to solve some of the core problems that have, kind of been plaguing these platforms for a while now.
Yeah, and the video makes some big claims about scalability, security, and all that.
For sure.
But I think before we get into all that, it would be helpful to just kind of like break down for our listeners what BlockDAG actually is. Like, what is it at its core?
Right, yeah, because it can get a little jargony, especially if you're not a developer.
Yeah.
So basically, at its heart, BlockDAG is different from traditional blockchains because of its structure.
Okay.
So instead of using a linear chain of blocks, it uses what's called a direct acyclic graph, or a DAG.
Okay.
And this DAG structure allows for multiple transactions to be processed at the same time simultaneously.
So is it kind of like, I don't know, if you think about like a grocery store, Bitcoin is like a single checkout line.
Yeah.
And BlockDAG is like having a whole row of those self-checkout kiosks all going at once.
Ooh, I like that. That's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it really highlights the potential for increased speed and efficiency, right? So with traditional blockchains, like, when things get really busy, when there's a lot of activity, the network can get bogged down,
Yeah.
which leads to those slower transaction times and those higher fees that everyone complains about.
Right, right.
But BlockDAG, because of that DAG structure, it's designed to kind of bypass those bottlenecks.
Okay.
So theoretically, at least, it can handle a much larger volume of transactions.
Yeah, and the video really emphasizes this point. Like, they're claiming that BlockDAG can handle like significantly more transactions per second than, existing blockchains.
Right, and from a technical standpoint, that claim actually makes sense because
Okay.
the DAG structure inherently allows for more parallelization.
Gotcha.
But of course, like the real world performance, that's going to depend on a lot of things, like network conditions, the types of transactions, all that stuff.
Yeah, so the potential's there.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait and see how it actually plays out in the wild.
Exactly.
For sure. All right, well, let's get back to this final testnet launch that they keep mentioning. Why is this such a big deal?
So a testnet is essentially like a testing ground for blockchain technology.
Okay.
It's like a simulated environment where developers can test everything, like the functionality, make sure it's stable,
Okay.
before they release it to the public.
So it's kind of like a beta version of a software program, but for blockchain.
Exactly.
Right.
So they can work out any kinks, find any vulnerabilities, all that stuff
Right.
before they, unleash it on the world.
Right.
But this final testnet, this is a particularly important one.
Okay, why is that?
Well, because this is the last stage before they do the full public launch,
Oh, okay.
which is known as the mainnet.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of like the final dress rehearsal
Okay.
before opening night.
Got it. All right.
So they're going to be testing everything at scale
Okay.
under conditions that are as close to real world as possible,
Right.
just to make sure that the network can actually handle it.
So if this final testnet goes well, does that mean that it's pretty much a green light for the mainnet launch?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
It's a really big indicator of whether the tech is actually ready for prime time.
Gotcha. And that's why there's so much hype around this March 28th date.
Exactly. Everyone's watching to see what happens.
Well, and speaking of hype, let's talk about this BDAG 800 bonus that they're pushing.
Ooh, yeah, the bonus.
They're really making a big deal about this in the video, claiming it's like this, amazing opportunity for early investors to get a massive return.
Yeah, it's definitely caught people's attention.
Yeah.
And it reminds me a little bit of those early days of crypto, when you had all those ICOs popping up.
Right.
And they were offering these huge incentives to get people to invest early on.
Yeah, but a lot of those, like, didn't really pan out, right?
Well, some of them did generate incredible returns, but you're right, a lot of them didn't.
Yeah.
So it's definitely important to be cautious with these kinds of incentives and really understand what the risks are.
So it's not as simple as get in early and get rich quick.
I wish it were that simple, but unfortunately it's not.
Right.
At the end of the day, the value of any cryptocurrency, including BlockDAG's BDAG token, it's going to be determined by the market.
Right.
Hype and bonuses, they can create some initial excitement.
Sure.
But the long-term value, that's going to depend on things like, how widely it gets adopted, what it can actually be used for, and just the overall sentiment in the market.
Okay, so let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about what BlockDAG could actually be used for.
Yeah.
Because they're not just aiming to be another cryptocurrency, right?
Right, they're talking about much bigger things.
Yeah, they're talking about revolutionizing finance, supply chains, even enterprise solutions.
Yeah, the video paints a pretty ambitious picture.
Yeah.
They're basically saying BlockDAG could go way beyond crypto and disrupt all these different industries.
Okay, so I'm intrigued, but can we get a little bit more specific?
Sure.
What are some real-world examples of how BlockDAG could actually be used in these different sectors?
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with finance.
Okay.
So BlockDAG's, supposed scalability.
Yeah.
That could make it really good for handling a massive amount of transactions.
Okay.
So think about things like cross-border payments.
Oh, okay.
Making them faster and cheaper.
Right, because those are a pain.
Huge pain, yeah. Or even streamlining securities trading.
Just potentially a way to send money overseas without having to pay those crazy fees and wait forever for it to go through.
Yeah, that's the idea.
That would be huge for a lot of people.
It would be a game changer for sure.
Okay, cool. What about supply chain management?
Okay, so imagine a system where every single step in a product journey, from the raw materials to the manufacturing all the way to delivery,
Yeah.
all of that is recorded on a blockchain.
Okay.
This would give you incredible transparency and traceability. So you could combat counterfeiting, you could make sure that products are sourced ethically, all that good stuff.
So no more fake designer handbags.
In theory, no.
That's awesome. And what about this DeFi thing they keep mentioning?
Yeah, DeFi?
I've heard the term, but I'm still not entirely sure what it means.
So DeFi stands for Decentralized Finance.
Okay.
And it's basically about creating a whole financial system that doesn't rely on those traditional institutions like banks.
So cutting out the middleman.
Exactly, putting control back into the hands of individuals.
Okay, interesting.
And BlockDAG is presenting itself as a platform that could support a whole range of DeFi applications.
Okay.
Like lending platforms, decentralized exchanges, all kinds of stuff.
Wow, so they're really aiming high with this.
Oh yeah, very ambitious.
But I mean, how realistic is it for BlockDAG to actually become this foundation for a whole new financial system?
That's the big question, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the potential is there, but there are definitely some big hurdles to overcome.
All right, well, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the technology, the potential applications, some of the challenges.
Yeah, we're just getting started.
But let's not forget that this all started with that YouTube video,
Right.
which, is pretty heavy on the hype.
It is.
So let's take a closer look at those claims and kind of dissect them a little more in
Yeah.
part 2 of our deep dive into BlockDAG.
So yeah, picking up on that whole hype thing, let's talk about this idea of BlockDAG, starting a blockchain revolution.
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of projects, come and go in the crypto world.
Oh, for sure.
They all promise to change the world.
Exactly.
But, how many of them actually deliver on that?
Right. It's a good question.
So what are some of the things that, realistically, we should be looking at to determine whether BlockDAG is going to be successful or not?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is adoption.
Yeah.
You can have the most amazing technology in the world,
Right.
but if nobody actually uses it,
Yeah, it's useless.
it's pointless, right? So BlockDAG, if it really wants to revolutionize anything, it needs to convince businesses, developers, everyday users to actually embrace it.
So it's not enough to just have cool tech.
No, not
Or
really.
they need to, build a whole ecosystem around it.
Exactly. It's like building a city.
Okay.
You can have the best infrastructure,
Yeah.
the nicest buildings, but if nobody lives there,
It's a ghost town.
it's a ghost town, exactly.
Right, so they need people to actually want to use BlockDAG.
Yeah, they need developers to build on it, businesses to integrate it, users to actually, use it for transactions.
Right, it needs to become a place where people want to be.
Exactly.
But, that's not easy, right?
No, not at all, especially in a space like blockchain where it's so competitive.
Right, because they're not the only ones out there.
Not even close. You've got these established players like Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Yeah, the big dogs.
The big dogs, exactly. They've got these huge communities, tons of developers, billions of dollars invested.
Right, so taking them on, that's a pretty daunting task.
It's a David and Goliath situation for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So how do they even stand a chance?
Well, that's where their supposed advantages come in, right?
Okay.
If they can actually deliver on this scalability, this security, this versatility,
Yeah.
then they might be able to carve out their own space.
So they need to prove that their tech isn't just different, it's actually better.
Exactly.
Okay, and worth switching over for.
Right, because people are already comfortable with what they're using.
Exactly.
So they need a good reason to make that switch.
Okay, but then there's also like the whole regulatory landscape to think about.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
Because governments are still trying to figure out how to deal with crypto.
Totally, it's a constantly evolving situation.
Yeah, it seems like every other week there's some new headline
I know, right?
about some country cracking down on crypto or trying to regulate it in some way.
And that uncertainty makes businesses and investors nervous.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because they don't know what the rules are going to be.
Right.
So even if you have amazing tech, even if you have a great community, you could still get tripped up by regulations.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what else should we be thinking about when we're evaluating this project?
Well, one thing that people often overlook is the team.
Okay.
Who are the people behind this project?
Yeah, who are the masterminds?
Exactly. What's their track record?
Have they done this before?
Right. Do they have the expertise to actually pull this off?
So it's not just about the tech itself.
No.
It's about the people building it.
Exactly. It's like any other startup, you need a good team to lead the way.
Right. Like you could have the best ship in the world, but if you have a terrible captain,
You're gonna sink.
you're going to sink, yeah.
Exactly.
All right, what about market sentiment?
Oh, market sentiment. That's huge.
Because I remember a few years ago, there was all this hype about Bitcoin,
Yeah, the crypto winter.
and then the prices crashed.
And everyone panicked.
Yeah, and people were like, is this whole crypto thing just a scam?
Exactly. So where we are in that cycle, that can have a huge impact on BlockDAG.
Even if their tech is good.
Even if it's amazing, if the market sentiment is bad, it's going to be tough for them.
So it sounds like predicting the future of BlockDAG is kind of like trying to predict the weather.
Pretty much. Yeah.
There are so many factors at play,
So many variables.
and it can change really quickly.
Exactly. But that's also what makes this space so exciting.
Right.
It's constantly evolving. You never know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it's definitely a wild ride.
It is.
But let's get back to that YouTube video for a second.
Okay.
Because it's super optimistic.
It is very optimistic.
But we have to remember that it's coming from a source that might be biased.
That's a really good point.
So who do you think is behind this video?
Well, it doesn't say explicitly, but the way it's made, the things they're saying, it definitely seems like it's coming from someone who has a vested interest in BlockDAG's success.
Right, so maybe someone who's directly involved in the project.
It could be.
Or an investor who's hoping to, pump up the price of their tokens.
That's another possibility.
Or even just, a super enthusiastic community member who really believes in it.
Yeah, that's possible too.
But regardless of who made it, we should be careful about taking everything they say at face value.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not that everything in the video is necessarily false.
Right.
But we need to view it with a critical eye.
And acknowledge that there's potential for bias.
Exactly. We need to be detectives here.
I like that analogy.
Right. We need to look at the evidence.
And consider all the possible motives.
Right. And speaking of motives, that brings us back to the BDAG 800 bonus.
Yes, the bonus.
It's definitely designed to get people excited to invest.
For sure.
But is it a genuine opportunity, or is it like a red flag?
That's what we're going to unpack in part 3 of our BlockDAG deep dive.
Okay. So we've talked about the tech behind BlockDAG, and we've talked about the potential, the challenges, all that stuff, and of course the hype.
Lots of hype.
Yeah. So now I think it's time to put on our detective hats and really examine this BDAG 800 bonus.
Let's get those magnifying glasses out.
Yeah, because is this a legitimate opportunity, or is it just a really clever marketing tactic?
Right. Are they trying to lure us in?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely times very strategically, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's tied to the final testnet launch, and then, of course, the mainnet launch coming up.
It creates that sense of urgency.
Right, get in now or you'll miss out.
Exactly. So is that urgency real or is it manufactured?
Yeah, that's the big question.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess these kinds of incentives aren't always a bad thing, right?
Not necessarily, no.
I mean, early adoption always comes with more risk.
For sure.
And so maybe this is just a way to, compensate people for taking on that risk.
It's like a venture capitalist, right?
Right.
They invest in a risky startup.
Yeah. And they expect a higher return if it's successful.
Okay, so it's not inherently a bad thing.
Right.
But we still need to be careful, right?
Oh, actually?
We need to look beyond just the bonus and like really scrutinize BlockDAG itself.
The fundamentals.
Yeah, does the technology actually
Does it deliver what they say it does?
Right, is there like an actual demand for what they're offering?
And are they building a real community around it?
So it all goes back to those core factors that we talked about.
It always does.
If BlockDAG can check all those boxes,
Yeah.
then maybe this bonus is worth considering.
Maybe.
But if it's all just smoke and mirrors,
Then investors could get burned.
right, so what's the advice here?
Do your research.
Don't just blindly jump in.
Don't get swept up in the hype.
Right, because the crypto space, it can be really exciting,
Oh yeah, the potential is huge.
but it can also be really risky.
The risks are definitely there.
So don't let the promise of getting rich quick cloud your judgment.
Think of it like buying a used car.
You wouldn't just hand over your money based on what the seller tells you.
Right. You'd want to kick the tires,
You'd want to look under the hood,
take it for a test drive.
maybe even get a mechanic to check it out.
Exactly.
So do the same thing with crypto investments.
Don't just rely on the marketing materials.
Dig deeper, read independent reviews, talk to experts.
Solid advice. All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive into BlockDAG, what's the big takeaway for our listeners?
I think the biggest thing is to be skeptical
Okay.
and to do your research,
Don't believe everything you see on YouTube.
especially when it comes to crypto.
Right. There's a lot of misinformation out there.
And a lot of people trying to take advantage of others.
Yeah. So be smart, be cautious.
But also don't be afraid to explore.
Right, because this is a fascinating space.
It really is.
There's a lot of innovation happening.
And the potential is enormous.
Absolutely. So yeah, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into BlockDAG. It's been a wild ride.
It has. And who knows what the future holds.
Yeah. But hopefully this has given you some food for thought
Some things to consider.
and maybe even spark some of your own questions.
Definitely.
So let us know what you think. What stood out to you? What questions do you have?
We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, hit us up in the comments. And until next time, happy blockchain exploring.